There's a certain kind of power most people never understand. It isn't loud, it isn't aggressive, it doesn't announce itself when it enters a room, but when it's present, everyone feels it. It's the kind of power that doesn't react, it doesn't flinch, it simply watches, waits, and moves only when necessary. That's the power of a mind that cannot be manipulated. A mind trained in the art of stillness, of clarity, of complete self-mastery. That's what the Stoics understood, and that's what we're going to uncover today, you see. Most people don't realize the real game of life isn't won by those who shout the loudest or react the fastest. It's won by those who stay composed when everything around them tries to pull them apart. Manipulators, narcissists, deceivers, they all thrive on one thing: your reaction. They need you to engage, to defend, to prove, because the moment you react, you're already dancing to their rhythm. You're playing their game. But what happens when you stop playing? What happens when you stand still, watchful, unmoved? They lose their grip, because without your participation, their power dissolves, and that's the ultimate Stoic counterattack. Not through confrontation, not through revenge, but through silence rooted in understanding. Now imagine for a second someone tries to provoke you. They insult you, they spread lies about you, they twist your words, but instead of firing back, instead of scrambling to correct them, you do nothing. You remain composed. You hold your peace like a sword kept in its sheath. That silence, that stillness, it drives them mad because they can't read you, they can't control you, and in that unreadability, you become untouchable. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not just philosophy, that's a battle strategy, a way of moving through life with unshakable control, and if you master it, there is no manipulator, no deceiver, no toxic person alive who can touch you. But let's get real. Staying silent when provoked isn't easy. When someone disrespects you, your ego wants to lash out. Your pride wants to set the record straight. But that's exactly where most people lose, because the moment you step into that chaos, you've already given up your power. The Stoic knows better. He knows that discipline begins with the decision to not be moved by things that do not deserve your energy. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing where to place your attention, your energy, your peace. And manipulators, they hate that. They need you to stay emotional. They need you chasing their approval, because as long as you're chasing, you're not thinking clearly. You're reacting. And reaction is the currency of the manipulator. They'll throw insults, guilt trips, silent treatments, all to see if they can still pull your strings. But when you don't budge, when your mind stays like a fortress, they begin to crumble. Let me give you an example. David was a manager in a cutthroat corporate world. One of his colleagues, a master manipulator, constantly undermined him, twisting his words in meetings, taking credit for his work. At first, David did what most people do. He defended himself, he clarified, he sent long emails explaining his position, but nothing changed. Every reaction was twisted, every defense became another tool against him, until one day David stopped. He stopped explaining, he stopped justifying, he focused on his work, let his results speak, and refused to engage in petty games. The manipulator lost control, started overplaying his hand, and eventually exposed himself without David lifting a single verbal sword. That's the art of strategic silence. But understand this, silence doesn't mean fear or avoidance. It's not running away. It's standing so firmly in your own peace that the chaos cannot reach you, because here's the secret. They don't need to physically harm you to hurt you. They just need to pull an emotional lever, make you doubt yourself, make you explain yourself, and once you're explaining, they're controlling. But when you respond with calm, when your energy is sacred, and you refuse to perform on their stage, they lose their grip. They're forced to reflect, and reflection for a manipulator, that's psychological death. Seneca taught, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." But in today's world, delay alone isn't enough. You need detachment. You need to place your emotions in a vault, guarded, not repressed, but protected, because the moment you choose stillness over struggle, you reclaim your energy, you fortify your mind, and you declare without speaking a word, I am not available for your games. That's the heart of psychological boundaries. They aren't loud. They aren't posted like signs on a door. They're lived. They're embodied. They sound like this inside your mind. I don't explain myself to confusion. I don't argue with chaos. I don't negotiate my peace. And because you live them, people start to feel the invisible walls around you. Not walls built out of bitterness, but boundaries forged from clarity. You don't have to say a word. Your silence speaks your standard. Every time someone tries to bait you into a conflict and you refuse, you reinforce that standard. You tell them, without ever opening your mouth, that your peace is non-negotiable. Let me show you how this plays out. Imagine a friend or partner, someone who close, who knows your emotional triggers. They know exactly what to say to get a rise out of you. In the past, you would have jumped in, defended yourself, explained yourself. But now you pause, you breathe, you observe, and you choose not to engage. You say one clear sentence, then silence, or you simply walk away, and that absence of reaction, it creates discomfort in them. Because manipulators don't know how to handle unpredictability. They expect the dance. They expect the same old steps. But when you stop dancing, they're left with themselves, and most can't stand that. Epictetus once said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That's a hard truth, but a liberating one. Because if your mind is complicit, then your mind can also be the solution. You can train yourself to remain composed, to detach from the bait, to stay centered. And this isn't repression. This is emotional intelligence. It's the highest form of discipline, not bottling up your emotions, but storing them where no manipulator can reach. Think of it like this. Your mind is a fortress. Every thought, every reaction, it's a door, and you decide which doors stay open, which stay closed. Most people leave every door open. They let opinions, criticisms, manipulations walk in freely, and then wonder why they're exhausted. But the Stoic, he guards those doors. He chooses what gets in. He filters the noise, and in that filtration, he finds peace. Now, let's get tactical. There are 3 predictable ways manipulators hook you first. They'll make you explain yourself endlessly. You catch yourself saying, let me clarify, let me explain. But that's a trap. Replace that with one clear sentence, then silence. Second, they'll bait you with provocations, hoping you'll snap. Instead, say, I'll respond when I'm calm. Then walk away. Third, they exploit your compassion, begging for endless chances. But patterns matter more than promises. Remember that if they keep showing the same behavior, no promise is worth believing. These aren't just phrases, they're declarations to yourself. That you are done playing games, that your peace isn't available for negotiation. That's Stoic power, not louder, but sharper. You don't fight them with volume, you fight them with vision, with a mind that's so clear, so composed, that their tactics bounce off you like arrows off armor. But there's one final move, one that flips the game entirely. Stop needing to be understood. As long as you crave their understanding, their approval, you're still playing, still on the board. But the moment you stop seeking closure from people who thrive on your confusion, you transcend the game. You step off the board completely and let them sit there, alone, wrestling with their own emptiness. That's real power. That's psychological warfare, the Stoic way. Not by becoming heartless, but by becoming impenetrable. You don't build walls of stone. You build walls of discernment. Not everyone gets access. Not everyone deserves a response. And when you build those walls, you don't have to announce them. They're felt. They're sensed in the way you carry yourself, the way you don't flinch when provoked, the way you refuse to engage in pointless battles. That's what unsettles manipulators the most. Not your anger, not your outrage, but your indifference. Because when you're indifferent to their chaos, they no longer matter. They no longer hold weight in your mind, and that to them is unbearable. It's ego death. Let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. That's not your burden, because peace is not up for debate, and clarity doesn't need permission. You're not punishing anyone. With your silence, you're protecting yourself, you're preserving your energy, and that's wisdom. That's what spiritual discipline looks like in action. It's not about reciting quotes, it's about living the truth behind them. It's walking through the fire with your standards intact, without having to shout, without having to prove. That is the quiet power of self-mastery. But let's break it down even further. Why do manipulators hate silence? Because silence forces them to face themselves. When you're silent, they can't twist your words. They can't play the victim. They can't use your reactions as evidence against you. They're left with nothing but their own reflection, and for people who live by deception, reflection is their greatest fear, because it exposes what they've been hiding even from themselves. This is why you don't need to argue, don't need to defend. You just need to hold the line every time you stay composed. Every time you refuse to flinch, you become unreadable. And unreadable people, they can't be controlled, they can't be predicted, and unpredictability is what makes you unconquerable. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, because adversity is where we prove ourselves, and in the face of manipulation, adversity is not the attack, it's the temptation to react, to explain, to chase, but the Stoic resists that temptation. He proves himself by holding still, by choosing peace over ego, clarity over chaos. And here's a practical reminder. Next time you feel pulled into an argument, a confrontation designed to make you spiral, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Does this deserve my energy? If the answer is no, walk away, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because the more you practice this, the stronger your mental fortress becomes. It's like training a muscle. The more you choose stillness, the more natural it becomes, and soon your silence will be your default strength, not your weakness, not your avoidance, but your superpower. You don't need to yell to assert yourself. You don't need to explain your worth. You just need to know it, to live it, to carry it in the way you move, in the way you breathe, in the way you remain calm when the world around you is screaming for a reaction. That's the Stoic way. That's the way of those who cannot be shaken. And when you master this, you'll notice something. Toxic people start to fade away, not because you push them, but because they can't thrive where there's no reaction, no chaos. They starve in the presence of peace, and they disappear. And in their absence, you'll find space. Space to grow, space to breathe, space to align with who you truly are without someone twisting your perception. That's when you realize detachment isn't about shutting people out. It's about keeping yourself intact. It's about preserving the clarity of your mind in a world that constantly tries to cloud it. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every day. He knew the mind was the only thing we truly control. Everything else, people's opinions, their tactics, their schemes, all of it is outside of us. And it's irrelevant unless we invite it in. So here's your practice. Observe without absorbing, notice without reacting. Be aware without being drawn in. When someone tries to push your buttons, recognize it as just that. An attempt, not a command. They don't get to decide how you feel, how you respond. Only you do. And when you stay unreadable, when your peace is locked in, they can't figure you out. And that mystery, that silence, that steady gaze that doesn't waver, it breaks them. Because they can't play a game with someone who refuses to sit at the board. Let me give you a framework for detachment. There are 3 levels. Mental detachment. Stop replaying conversations in your head. Stop scripting what you should have said. It's done. It's gone. Let it die. Emotional detachment. Stop labeling them as evil or broken. Just see them for what they are, not fit for your inner circle. Not aligned with your peace. No anger, just distance. Spiritual detachment. Release the need for closure from them. Understand that closure is something you create within yourself. It's an internal event, not a permission slip from the person who hurt you. Once all three align, you step into indifference, not coldness, but power. And here's what usually happens next. When you stop reacting, they escalate first, they guilt-trip you then, they provoke you then, they disappear, hoping you'll chase. Don't fall for it. That's the encore trap. It's not peace. It's the setup for another round. When the devil loses power, he puts on a halo. Don't be fooled. Stay detached, not with hatred, but with precision. You're not ignoring them. You're prioritizing yourself. Detachment is the language of the wise. It's not isolation, it's discernment. Choosing where your energy flows, choosing what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Let silence speak for you, not because you're weak, but because you've evolved beyond the need for validation from the very people who tried to dismantle you. Final truth. Detachment isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally unavailable to those who weaponize connection. If your peace requires you to perform, to prove, to beg, then it was never peace. It was manipulation disguised as intimacy. And you were never meant to be someone's pawn. You were meant to master your mind, to walk away in quiet, unshakable power, because real strength doesn't shout. It simply stands and remains unmoved, unbothered, unbreakable. And when you stand like that, you'll see how quickly the world changes, not because the people around you changed, but because you did, because you no longer hand over your peace like a bargaining chip. You no longer trade your clarity for temporary validation. You no longer entertain the idea that you have to prove your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. That's the shift. That's the transformation from being the target to becoming the strategist. You see the game and you simply refuse to play, because when you stop playing, you win by default. Think about it. When was the last time someone provoked you and you gave them everything they wanted? Your anger, your explanation, your desperation to be seen. And what did it leave you with? Exhaustion, frustration, emptiness. That's the trap. But now, you know better. Now, you see it for what it is, a performance, a script they've rehearsed many times. But your role is no longer written in their story. Now let me ask you, who in your life loses power the moment you stop explaining yourself? Who thrives on your reactions? Who becomes frantic when you go silent? That's your sign. That's where your energy has been leaking, and it's time to close that gap, not with anger, not with confrontation, but with peace, with stillness. Because the strongest people, the truly unbreakable ones, they're not loud, they're not reactive, they're composed, they're clear, they're strategic. They walk away, not because they're weak, but because they're wise. Every manipulator, every narcissist, every toxic person you've encountered, they've all run the same playbook: trigger the emotion, exploit the reaction, gain control. But when you remove the reaction, when you become unreadable, the playbook crumbles. They have no script to follow, no path to navigate, because you've become the unmoved target. Picture this. Someone tries to humiliate you in front of others. They expect the outburst, the defensive comeback, but instead, you give them nothing. No reaction, just a composed gaze, a quiet presence, and a measured walk away. In that moment, you've won. Because you've destroyed their power without lifting a finger. Marcus Aurelius taught, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the Stoic lens. That's detachment in motion, observing the storm, but not stepping into it. You don't fight manipulation with manipulation. You don't fight chaos with chaos. You fight it with clarity, with a mind so sharp, so focused, that no confusion can penetrate it. And that's what Stoicism trains you to build. Not just a calm face, but a calm mind. A fortress inside your thoughts where no insult, no deception, no manipulation can find purchase. Because when your mind is fortified, your emotions follow, your decisions follow, and your peace remains untouched. You don't need anyone to validate your experience. You don't need closure from someone who benefits from keeping you confused. You just need to reclaim your space, to protect the real estate of your mind like it's sacred. Because it is your peace, your energy. They're your most valuable assets, and not everyone deserves access to them. So ask yourself, where am I giving away peace in the name of caring? Where am I explaining myself to people who've already decided not to understand me? And most importantly, where am I reacting when I could simply remain still? This is your invitation to stop feeding the chaos, to stop explaining yourself into exhaustion, to stop negotiating your worth. You don't have to fight for your place in someone's mind. You just have to decide that your mind is your own, unrentable, untouchable. Remember, manipulators don't need your love. They need your energy. They need your confusion. They need your reactions. So when you go silent, when you stay calm, they panic, they lose control. Because their control was always built on your reactions. So make this your Stoic mantra. I no longer react to disrespect. I no longer engage with confusion. I walk in clarity. I no longer trade my energy for attention. Invest it in becoming unshakable, because your silence is not passive. It's strategic. Your distance is not cold. It's sacred. Your detachment is not fear. It's freedom. You don't need to fight every battle. You just need to be unshakable in the face of provocation. That's what a mental fortress is. It's not hiding from the world. It's facing the world without letting it rewrite your peace. So next time they come back with apologies, with flattery, with guilt, trips disguised as love, don't open the door, not because you hate them, but because you love your peace more. Your growth is not a revolving door. Not every return is a reunion. Sometimes it's just a test to see if you've really moved on. And if your peace is still up for grabs, let them wonder, let them rewrite their own story, but you're not in it anymore. You've upgraded, you've evolved, and you're building a life that doesn't require constant emotional recovery, because the truth is this: the most dangerous person to a manipulator isn't the one who fights back. It's the one who smiles, steps back, and walks away in absolute inner peace, because that person has already won. And when you live like this, when your mind is sharp, your heart is steady, and your soul is aligned, no one can manipulate you again. Not because they stopped trying, but because they no longer know where to touch you. You've become untouchable, not through armor, but through inner light. And that is the final form of power. This is your battlefield strategy. Your psychological freedom, your Stoic truth. You don't outsmart darkness by becoming dark. You rise above it. Not to feel superior, but to protect your peace. Because manipulators thrive in confusion, but your clarity, that ruins their illusion. Stay sharp, stay still, stay unstoppable. This completes your full Stoic blueprint. For emotional mastery and psychological resilience, carry it, live it, and let your silence be the loudest statement you ever make.